Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Spark of Genius Flesh and Blood production. We are on deck tech mode for the Spark of Mediocrity production.
Done gameplay.
We're done gameplay. It only took ages. Nah, it was just a lot of games.
It was 4 heroes, bunch of permutations. Yeah.
4 heroes is a lot. So, joined by my co-creator, co-commentator, co-caster, co-compatriot Rob. My name's Eric. This is the Potato Spark of Mediocrity Vynnset build 3. I don't know how many builds there are. There's a lot. I did a lot of experimenting with this hero. Because I was hoping that
Well, you switch between different kind of
builds. Yeah, different I'll talk a little bit about that.
But this is the build that you landed on. Is this kind of the final? There's room. Okay. So
this is the open list, and what I mean by the open list, I mean that this is something I would bring to a calling, but not necessarily something like a Pro Tour or Worlds. What I mean by that is that the calling is an open event. And because the calling is an open event, or a Rhodes or World ProQuest or whatever, because it's open, you're going to see a lot more different decks. And by different, I mean different. Like, you're going to see Dory Fatigue, you're going to see Bolted Fatigue, you're going to see Rhinar, you're going to see Pain. You're going to see
decks everywhere.
Pet decks, exactly. And so I think you need a bit of a bigger range in your sideboarding to be able to play to your strengths rather than countering other strengths of the decks that you'll be facing. So for a PT of Worlds where it's a more defined meta, I feel, I would probably try to tailor my list towards the top 3-4 heroes, because that's probably what I'm going to be seeing the most. You have to understand, the calling is like minimum 12 round Swiss all CC, Worlds is mixed format. So there's a lot more strategizing when you're dealing with a PT. Well, the PT I played, I guess, was all CC, but that was a Jersey. But like the ones nowadays are going to be mixed. Worlds is mixed, all that kind of thing. So that being said, this is like my open deck list, so something I'd play in an open format. It is like something I've tested a fair amount. I probably have like 50, 60 plus games on this particular list, which is
more than I thought, actually. Yeah, that's a lot.
Well, between the series and between
your own side testing,
Yeah, but this list in particular, I think about 50 games just on different sideboarding, 2 or 3 cards here, 2 or 3 cards there. Not this complete list, 50, but like permutations of it. But it's still running like Rosetta Nebula, things like that. So, big change kind of that off the bat, you'll see the equipment, Crown of Providence. So the main board equipment is Crown of Providence, Rosetta Thorn, Creepers.
So your chest piece is like the only thing you don't really have here? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so there'll be like there's 3 chess pieces which we'll talk about a bit later that depend on the matchup.
Okay,
Creepers always comes in, Crown always comes in, Rosetta always comes in, other than a siding. So Rosetta is the only thing you can swap for Nebula Blade, which Nebula Blade comes in some matchups. The strength of Nebula Blade is very different in that you're allowed to just go tall on. You can essentially go tall on more turns. So the strength of Rosetta is that, especially with Tunic, with Creepers, you can extend your turn such that a blue pays for pretty much all your non-attacks, pays for creepering the non-attack, and pays for Rosetta.
Right. And that's talking about like cards like Envelop if you have to.
Envelop, Incantation. Those are the
Incantation. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Because you've got 12 non-attack costing, and then Mauve and Revel are free, so the Tunic doesn't really matter.
Or hopefully you have Revel. Revel could be just gravy.
Revel helps.
Yeah,
Revel helps. The key is that the blue pays for everything all the time with Nebula, whereas if you have with Rosetta, if you have Nebula, it has to be a 0 cost. So you could Creepers
a 0 cost.
Yes, and then you still have 2 floating to Nebula after, right? So you're able to like Revel Nebula, and that's a thing, right? It's a thing that happens more often than not, because the key is that Nebula lets you play a little bit slower that way because it generates a chance. So there's an actual on hit, and 4 is a breakpoint, so it's pretty reasonable. Not good against decks that like have a ton of D-reacts. That's kind of like the one reason why it's not. Rosetta mixed damage is also kind of superior into decks that don't block super efficiently, because you're always going to be leaking damage, and Rosetta lastly lets Creepers kind of be on regardless. So if you're able to string together a non-attack attack in Rosetta, Creepers is usually always going to be on. Even if you even if you use it once, it's going to be on, sometimes twice. People don't really block. A lot of decks don't block Arcane Period, the aggro decks, so quite nice.
I think Creepers is really a star piece in this deck. Creepers shines.
There's a broken piece of
equipment. Yeah, it feels like it's stronger in Vynnset than it is for other Rune Blades. I don't know. Maybe not Viscerai. It's probably on par, but
Very
because
good.
Vynnset
I think it's
is
better on Viscerai.
maybe a little better on
It's not as
Viscerai.
good on it's not as good on Briar because Briar on snaps because she
Yeah.
has more zero for force.
Yeah.
And like E strike and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it makes less sense to use
But if you
to
could,
use creepers,
if you could chain Rune Gate though, with it, so like
which is the key.
yeah, exactly. So it can present a lot of damage on this deck specifically because you can come in for like 9 more damage with Rune Gate, right? Your 3 rune chance plus, there's 6 or something.
Yeah. Specifically like creepersing in Revel, creepersing in read the runes if you already have the action point and you don't need it.
Exactly.
It's a way to extend your hand.
Or even like a envelop, so like you hit with Whale maybe. I think Whale creates the rune chance, so you
close the chain, create 2
a
chance.
few, then creepers.
If you've done it, then creepers envelop. You have 3 chance. If you have another Whale and you're banished, you can play that for free. It's pretty nice.
Yeah. Anyway, I went off topic.
That's the main board equipment.
We can go into the sideboard equipment if you want, since we're on the topic of equipment, maybe.
Yeah. We can scroll down to sideboard.
We'll finish off the equipment part first, I guess.
Yeah. So let's start with.
Also, Grasp is in the sideboard here.
Grasp not in the main. Grasp
should be main board.
Yeah, that's my mistake.
Yeah,
I was probably moving some stuff around. So Grasp is in the main board.
Yeah.
The
only other glove would be Vexing, I assume, into Wizards. Or if you want, is this our AB1? Is this the only source of AB1?
No, Carapace.
Oh, Carapace is also AB1.
It's AB2. Okay.
AB2. Okay, so Vexing Quillhand comes against the Mirror and other Rune Blades. And then you've got the Carapace, which comes in against Wizards specifically.
No, Carapace comes into other things. So the key is that...
I guess the blocking is nice,
Yeah, you get 3 block, right?
Yeah.
So it's quite nice against that. Also, like, blocks things like Rosetta if you wanted to, so it's useful there.
Okay. Yeah.
The Grasp is usually going to be the key, and that the reason is because the main board at least has mainly RuneGate 2 cards. So it's running 9 Phantom Wraiths, it's running Deathly Delights, it's running all the widespread runes. It's majority 2-gate. And to reduce the chance of bricking, which Rune
Blades in general just
Rune Blades in
have
general
that built into their kit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like because you have to run so many non-attacks, so it just kind of happens. But to reduce the chance of doing that, you're able to pitch a blue to Grasp, and then come in with any 2 for 6 or 2 for 5 or whatever. So it just means your 2 cards still work. So if you're able to block 2 cards, banish a 2 for 5 or 2 for 6, and then pitch a blue, Grasp. If you have no rune chant generation, the issue I have with Quillhand, in that it's a non-blocking card. So if you're running Quillhand in a non-AB matchup, right? So let's say you're running into Katsu.
Yeah.
So you run this card, you're gonna get 2 chance out of it. That's cool. It's probably 2 damage if they're an aggressive deck. They're probably not blocking the chance, right? Yeah. You get 2 arc. You get one get out of jail free card. Right?
For Annihilation, maybe if you wanted to get like 4 rune chance off for that.
It's true. If you have Incantation, you banish Annihilation, get a 2nd chant. Vexing Quillhand, get Annihilation out. The problem is, for a deck like Vynnset, even Viscerai or whatever, you already have so much variance that you want to try to add more consistency. In my view, you want to try to add more consistency to the deck, not more variance to the deck. Now, if you think you're gonna race so fast that the problem is that Vynnset's racing is mediocre at best. Because you generally need a couple, at least 1 turn to set something up to be able to proc more of your cards. Otherwise, you're just a higher variance aggressive deck that can't go off every turn, right? So it's not like Chain, right? It doesn't really make much sense to do that. So Vexing kind of gets a 3-gate. In my view, it gets a 3-gate or a 4-gate. So if you have no chant generation, you just banish a Vynnset, you Vexing, and you get 3-gate out. Fine, you get your Destruction, a Whale, whatever.
Yeah.
Right? But the thing is that it's not so important to get Whale out in this deck because I'm not on Flail. Now, if I was on Flail, it makes a lot more sense to go Quillhand in more matchups because Quillhand lets you get the Whale. More importantly, you could do things like Mauve, Quillhand, Whale, Mauve, Quillhand, and another. You can Creepers in another non-attack, get another chant off Flail if it hits. Right, you do 1 damage and it hits.
Right.
Then close the chain, right? Get your 3 chance, 2 from the 2 from the whale, 1 from the flail. That's weird to say out loud.
Yeah.
And then play another whale, like from banish. You could string together
Right.
turns like that. The thing
That
is, I'm
makes
not
sense.
on flail. So if I'm not on flail, and I don't, like,
Yeah.
I'm trading three life for what?
Yeah, that makes sense.
less
Yeah, you
consistency?
might as well get the block. So
Yeah.
what matchups does it come in? Just the Rune Blades?
Vex and Quillhand is mainly going to be your AB matchup, so it's going to come in versus Kano for sure. It's gonna
Definitely
come in
against
versus-
Viscerai. Because AB
Yeah,
one.
against Viscerai. Viscerai will be Quillhand
The mirror.
Tunic probably.
Yeah, the mirror.
Yeah, the mirror. It's gonna come in versus Icelander, of course.
For AB3.
It's gonna come in, yeah, AB3 because it's just nice. You just straight up
Yeah.
block blue. You block blue Ice Fade and stuff like that. It's quite nice.
Right.
And the getting around there's stuff with Rune Gate. I mean, the armor is okay, but you already have other armor. Like you already have the crown, so you don't need armor all the time. And you have Carapace too, which will block for 2 before it breaks with Temper.
Right.
And also running the Quillhand Carapace allows you into Icelander, allows you to block fully with the Carapace and still have AB1. So later in the game, when you might not necessarily need it or have less blues or what have you,
Right.
if you're in a position to actually be able to use the last piece of armor, which just straight up saves you a life, which in that matchup matters quite a bit. So those kind of matchups. So the big ones, Carapace, Tunic, Husk, when you use them, right? So Husk, in my view, at the moment in this build, is really only for Azalea and Dorinthia. So, and this is like asterisks, like you have to use it correctly, right? You have to use it for Dorinthia. It's really to prevent their extra damage turn. So if they are rocking a 3-card hand and they're doing something like Red Valor, Dawnblade swing for 6, they have 2 floating, or sorry, they have like 1 floating and like what card in hand, right?
Right. Something with
You block with
reprise,
Husk.
probably.
Yeah, exactly. Like you block with Husk. Yeah, if they have a 1 for 3 pump, they're paying the 1, so they can't swing again with Dawnblade. So you're kind of okay with that because you just prevent so much other stuff, right? Because if you let it hit, you give them a reprise, and they had reprise, and it's like Iron Song, you're taking 3, and then you just have another Dawnblade swing, so you're giving them a card anyways.
And the main thing is that Husk cannot, you can't turn off Blood Debt with Husk. So once you play it and you block with it, you're stuck to take 1 damage every turn, unlike Leviah who can turn it off. So, you
really don't want to be using it before like 17, 18 health. So if you see like that and you're at 17, you block with the Husk, or 18, you block with the Husk, because even if they go over you, it doesn't matter at that point, right?
Exactly.
You're still getting 6 life.
And unlike Chain, you're not really
right.
And unlike Chain, you're not really ramping up to do like crazy turns late game. So
you're not really pivoting off of
can't
it. You're
race.
really more preventing it. Yeah, you're really more preventing than pivoting off of this.
Yeah.
Whereas Chain did both. Azalea, it's mainly because a lot of their on hits like hurt a lot, especially Red in the Ledger. So if you can Husk and be able to block 9 on like a Red in the Ledger for 8, and it lets you have a turn, the swing goes both ways. Again, you don't want to do it until later on. However, Red in the Ledger just kind of shits on your day, right? That's kind of why Warmongers is in the deck also. But
that makes sense. Okay.
Those are situations. It used to come in versus Bravo until it was just like Pummel just screws you so hard. Like it just there's so many ways they can, like, they CNC Pummel, take your Husk, or like you block CNC with Husk, they pummel anyways, take your arsenal, pick a card, and you lost Husk.
Yeah.
So it's just like, yeah, you prevent 6, but they're still getting 2 cards, and you get an IP penalty because you're Vynnset. So like you might not be able to do anything in response, and you just took 1 Blood Debt.
The gamble's too high.
So I would run Carapace into Bravo specifically. I think there's an argument for Tunic. I've just had more. I've had better games with Carapace just because I was able to block 6 easily off Grasp, Carapace, Crown.
Yeah.
Off 1, and then you can block again with it and Grasp and block another 2. So you run that and reduce, and you're able to block another 6 off stuff like Spinals. It helps quite a bit. But and CNC, if they pummel you, It's kind of whatever. But that's kind of a way to deal with that. That is all the equipment, I think.
Okay, very nice. I'm sorry, you talked about when to run Nebula Blade. You said into Dromai. I don't even think you mentioned which.
The chess pieces. So Azalea Bravo. Azalea Dory Husk, Carapace. You're running the arcane matchups usually.
Right. That makes sense.
Not Briar.
Maybe into Bravo too. You play Carapace.
Yeah, into Bravo. And then the
Tunic for everything else.
Tunic for everything else. Yes. Nebula Blade mainly into decks that the on hit is more relevant and that it's more chance that it would hit. So
Okay.
the Dromai is the biggest one because the on hits are quite nice. I would tend to like it quite a bit into aggro matchups too, just because the on hit is generally coming through. So this card's essentially a 2 for 5 off a non-attack,
Yeah.
which is quite nice.
And it makes
because-
it so that your rune gate can trigger. Well, you'll have a rune gate 2 by minimum on your own turn, unless you have another pump, which will bring it to 3. But it's really good for setting up. Unlike Rosetta, where once you attack with it, you lose all your rune chance. So this one gives you more setup for the turn after.
Yeah, the only thing is the negative synergy with Revel, where you Revel and then if you create one off Nebula, it goes away, right? So you just
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
But if you could get around that by Nebula first, and then getting an action point with creepers if you didn't already creepers, so like you mauve something Nebula creepers, and then play something to use those chance. It's a little wonky, but it technically works.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess we can look at the main board, and maybe we can look at like the bread and butter of the deck, just like your main cards that you're going to be attacking with. I assume everything with Rune Gate is going to be your bread and butter.
So nothing is super. So I'll start with the most obvious stuff. You run all the widespreads.
Right,
Ruin,
so-
Destruction, Annihilation. You have to. They are your disruption. They are your bread and butter cards. It is non-negotiable. They're all amazing cards. They all pop. They're great.
They're all poppers. Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
They're all poppers. Widespread Ruin is probably the most flexible, followed by Destruction, Annihilation, which have Disruption. Ruin, don't be afraid to ping yourself and to banish the top card, because that's
Right.
it's another way for you to get another card in the banish to make your Revel turn sick, right? So
Yeah.
being able to do something, Revel off creepers, and place having your banish instead of just attacking with the weapon, right? Because if you creepers in the Revel and you already have a go again, then you get the 2 action points to play something else for free and then Revel, right? So it's just like a lot more snowball potential. So don't be afraid to ping yourself with Revel. So if you want to play a envelop, let's say you Vynnset, you play envelop, you have 2 chance, ping yourself to get one of the chance through, and then you force them to banish off the top 2, which is kind of nice.
Right.
And then you come in with widespread. If you have a Mauve, you can like shove the Mauve in, widespread, pitch, Nebula, or Rosetta, or whatever.
Yeah.
It's quite nice. Right? It presents awkward on hits. Even the blue envelope and the red envelope, they both are quite decent here. The blue envelope still makes a.
It still makes a rune chant. They both make one.
Yeah, I was gonna say the breakpoint doesn't really matter because you're already making the first rune chant unpreventable.
Right.
So it's not really super. It doesn't really matter.
Right.
The widespreads are non-negotiable. The 6 incantations, in my view, are non-negotiable. This card makes your deck. Without this card being a card, this deck would not function. I don't think Vynnset would function, period, without incantation. The most important card in the deck. The blue is just so bad that I cannot find using it. But I looked at it seriously.
I was gonna ask, but then I thought about it. Like, that card's pretty bad. So
it's bad. So we're looking at 6 incantations, non-negotiable. It just lets you Rune Gate 2 forever. On Envelop, you Rune Gate 3. You're on 6 Envelop minimum. It's not that hard.
So the Rune Gate 2s, we've got Deathly
Delight, and 9 Phantom, and Ruin.
And Phantom as well here. Oh, 9 Phantom. Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
and
so you're running 15 Rune Gate 2s. Yeah, you're running 15 Rune Gate 2s.
Okay.
Yeah. This is more than average, I would say, just because I see a lot of decks running Phantom Banshee. I see some decks not running Delight at all. It really depends. Now, RuneGate, again, my focus on this deck was to be slightly lower ceiling, better consistency. And so because I'm running Grasp, RuneGate 2s make a lot more sense. If I was on Vexing, maybe, I don't know, maybe RuneGate 3s are slightly better, but I think RuneGate 2s
But it's
are
it's a one time, so it's kind of weird. Like, you use it once, and then your following turns are pretty much garbage.
Yeah, I think most people run the blues and reds, but I'm running the yellows just because like 2 for 5 is still 2 for 5. I mean, you run a mauve, it's still an on hit that requires 2 cards, and off of a
I mean, the Wraith. Right?
of a RuneGate 2, you pitch any yellow and blue, and you can follow it up with Nebula Blade, so you're threatening 2 on hits. So you play mauve, Phantom off the second, whatever the second rune chant was. Let's say it was turn 2, like you Vynnset Arsenal turn 1, turn 2 you Vynnset again Phantom Wraith, you have 2 chants, and then you could play this for free. So you just mauve Phantom, maybe you blocked with a card, pitch a yellow or a blue, and then you Nebula, and then you're presenting 2 on hits, 9 damage, with a potential for another 4 damage if they leak on hits.
Right.
Because of the rune chant. 3 from Mauve,
3
and then
from
1
Mauve.
from Mauve, and then 1 from Nebula.
Right.
There's 13 cards, right? And you block for 3.
13 damage.
Or 13 damage, yeah. So you block for 3, and so you're getting a 16 value. That's not bad, right?
Yeah. Pretty good.
Or
Pretty
turn one incantation, or literally turn 1 anything, and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
That's why I like the 2 gates. 3 gates, we're running 6 whale, 3 widespread destruction.
Yep. I got the whale here.
I think the whales are also. I think the red and blue whales are non-negotiable, just because blue is still a breakpoint and red is just both a pauper, but also like you get 3 gate often enough, especially if you add in the other envelopes. And so because you're on minimum 12 generation, it's not that hard to get 3 chance. However, it's easier to chain them together. It's much harder to get this out without flail. It is true. I will agree, because you don't get that generation after the whale. You don't get to like Mauve play whale, like maybe like Mauve play whale, or maybe Mauve envelop play whale, envelop trigger Vynnset, right? Do 1 damage to you, play whale, you get a chant off that,
right?
And then 1 unpreventable from them. Or you don't have envelop, you already have the chant, and then you just flail, and that does the damage to yourself also, because it takes a life. Either way, it just gives you another way to lose a life on your own end as the player.
Right.
So you don't get the 3s as much, so that's why we're not running as much. We're only running 6 versus 15. You can tell, like, it's very, very obvious, right?
Yeah. Makes sense.
Now, again, you can side in more. We'll talk about that a little bit later. 6 envelopes. Envelop is also super, super good, just because you need as much obvious rune. Like, it's a Shadow Runeblade card. It's pretty standard why you should be running this card, right? Generates a chant. +3 is nice, so it's a 1 for 4. In red. As go again, use those creepers. Use it for Vynnset ability. You just run 6 of this regardless, right?
And you've got some more on the sideboard here, so
we have some more on the sideboard.
Yeah, there are more. Yeah.
Mauve, I'm on 6. I see some lists on 9. I see some on 8, 7. I see a whole bunch of shit.
You've got some
I'm on
more
6
here.
in the main.
Yeah.
6 in the main, 2 in the side. The 6 main board ones are mainly just because you need Mauve to be able to easily trigger your go again for Runegate into a weapon swing.
Yeah.
If you don't want to be using creepers.
And the on hit's amazing because you can then trigger more rune gates after this, or pay for more rune gates. Yeah.
Yeah. This is the on hit they have to block, because if you have another card in there, it's just like especially of something like
free whale or something.
Especially on widespread ruin. And you do damage on widespread ruin, and then you banish a card, and then you banish something, and those 3 chants just pay for another attack.
Yep, that's true.
Like,
yeah,
that's a big one I've done before. Yeah, I've flipped whale off the top. Like, I've banished whale, generate 3 chants. I'm just like, oh, I'll play this whale for 9, 3 chants at 6.
It makes it tough for aggro decks to like really decide whether to block this or not, because that's a lot more damage that you can potentially just throw out for nothing, or from nothing.
And keep in mind, this is if you already have 2 chants, it's a 2-card hand. Because start of turn, banish ruin, play Mauve, play ruin. Red Mauve, assuming it's red Mauve, and then you flip it.
It has to be red.
Even a yellow Mauve. Yeah, a yellow Mauve could do a rune.
Yellow into a Phantom Wraith, or into another widespread ruin, why not?
Yeah. And so you do that. You're coming in for 6. You hit for 6. You're doing 3 more from the rune chance from Mauve. That's 9, and then 6 more from Whale.
That's a 2-card 15.
2-card 15, and you generate chance off Whale.
Right.
Because you've done damage.
Because you've done some damage.
It's 16, but you get to use that rune chant later.
Yeah,
so you can get any rune
really
day 2 for free. Yeah, so there's some stupid shit you can do with this deck for sure.
Yeah.
The key is the consistency, right? So to that end, we have more go again.
And I do see lead the charge. Or into puppetry too. Yeah.
I think puppetry is the more obvious one. Again, it triggers Vynnset. It's shadow. The +1 is great because you have so many 6 power, so it turns everything into a break point, right?
Yeah.
Widespread destruction, ruin,
everything.
annihilation,
red phantoms.
Definitely
whale.
It does, but it also adds the on hit that lets you banish, and that's even more powerful because again, you can't banish more than 1 card in this deck per turn very easily, other than ruin and puppetry. So you're just adding another way to. People might not remember that puppetry has text other than +1 and go again. Yeah, text is pretty good because you get to banish another card, especially if you're able to then create chants after. Like if you do that off a whale, create a chant, um, generate another chant off like envelop or something like that,
Mhm.
and then play that rune gate card because you now have two chants, like a 2 for 5 or 2 for 6. Shadow puppetry allows you to just go even wider, right? So it's quite good either way.
Absolutely.
Easy to use off creepers. Revel in Rune Blood, I think we've talked about it enough already. It's just like,
Yeah.
it's stupid.
It's a why not
It's
include. You just have to have it.
it's a 0 for 4 that can turn your turn from like 12 damage to like 20 something damage really easily, which is quite nice. You could do these super turns, and you can get disruption on the boot because you can pay for widespread annihilation with a Revel.
Yeah, I was gonna mention
Very
it's exactly
disgusting.
enough for this. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so if you have something in Banish already and you're setting up a nice 5-carder, you can have your chance, play whatever you want, Mauve into Deathly Delight, and then, so you have Annihilation, you banish Deathly Delight on your next turn, you Mauve, Deathly Delight, you have your 2 chance. Let's say you're feeling spicy, right? So now you want to Creepers. You Creepers in the Revel, then you get to pay for widespread for free. You pay for it, and then you use your last 2 floating as a blue to swing Nebula, and you have a card to Arsenal.
Mm-hmm.
I think I counted right because that's a 5-card hand, and because you banished Delight, so you still have a Banish Delight. Annihilation is still in
the combat chain. So you
no. It's still in the banish from before, from a turn before. So those are
right.
the 2 that you have, and then you Mauved, and then you Reveled. Yeah, that's your full hand, which is just like really good. Okay, maybe you don't get to Arsenal. Maybe that was too greedy.
Maybe.
No, you do get to Arsenal. I think you do get to Arsenal. My brain's a little mushy.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
One is it's very good. That is that.
With disruption, right? So it's like an amazing card. With
Annihilation does. Yeah. Annihilation just lets you take one of their. How often are they blocking 4 chance? And if they're blocking 4 chance, you just took 2 cards from them.
Exactly.
Not bad, right?
All right. Well,
we've got charge.
Yeah. A card that we see now and again when Prism kind of comes in and out because of the that dastardly what was it called, the Arclight Sentinel, right?
Yeah.
So
Prism is back. Hashtag back, but not really.
Back
but
to
it's still a deck.
Some capacity.
See. Yeah. The main reason is to generate more go again. So without already yellow mobs, you're on 12 go again with Lead the Charge. And Lead the Charge is nice because it's similar to Mob and Puppetry, where if you Revel it in, you essentially effectively get 2 action points because it gives your next thing an action point, and you still have the action point from before because it has go again on the text, right?
So right. So you can do 3 things instead of just the 2.
Yeah. So you do something. Let's say you Mob something, Revel, Lead the Charge, play something else, weapon.
Right.
Sorry. Yeah, play something else, weapon. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So you're gonna get 2, and then you get 1 from the action point. You can weapon and do something else, I guess. So that's the key. You get 1 extra action point if you need it. Mm-hmm. It generally doesn't come up that often. However, when you play Bounding, it does come up sometimes. So kind of nice. But usually it's just another go again source, honestly.
Cool. Okay.
Piercing Shadow Vice is literally just a blue that comes in for 4 off Arcane.
Okay. Fair enough, yeah. A good blue in slot.
It's a 2 for 4 Blood Debt. That was what I was looking for.
Okay.
A reasonable Blood Debt card.
Which you could banish.
Red Triptych is not a Blood Debt card. Oath of Arknight's not a Blood Debt card.
Right.
I've tried both of these cards before in other lists.
Yeah,
Look,
it's a target for Vynnset to banish, right?
I like bricking just as much as the next guy.
Oh,
however, I don't want to brick multiple turns in a row, so I'm going to play a little bit more Blood Debt in my deck.
That's fair. Okay, so we've got a few cards here in the sideboard. Yeah, we can tackle it however you want. I guess the Warmonger's Diplomacy is just kind of like a given at this point. Everyone's running
every deck that you think it's good into is good into.
Yeah.
Azalea, Lexi.
Yep. Rune Blades.
The Viscerai.
Of course, Rune Blades. Yeah, exactly. So
anyone who uses a good amount of non-attacks or non-attack actions or non-attack action abilities, you play it into them. I'm not really going to go into all the scenarios.
Exactly. But it's a star card that's been coming up, and the price has been going up too, just because of how versatile it is. So it's a really good card, and I think most decks should be running this in their sideboards. It's a blue that blocks for 3, costs 0, and can just shut down your opponent's turn. So it's really
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, and what you do to side this in is you just replace lead the charge. That's it.
Okay.
You just take out the lead the charges and you put Warmongers.
You're
very
at
very easy swap.
56.
I'm at 20 boots.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but you're not just adding
Okay.
like you're not
You're just gonna put it in. Okay, yeah, interesting. So I guess in you do have to add 4 cards here from your sideboard into it, right? So I guess we can talk about which ones you added in certain matchups. I guess that might make it easier. Yeah, so you can go however you want.
Warmongers is the tech, so it is the one tech card that doesn't just like randomly come in. You replace lead the charge in those matchups, Ranger, Rune Blade, what have you. That is the replacement card. The other ones are a lot more straightforward. The go wider quotations, go wider packages, 2 yellow mauve, 2 red bounding, and you get to 60. This is exactly what it sounds like. Maximum go again, maximum width. So
Fair enough.
Bounding,
Extra thick.
Bounding, what it does is you're able to extend your hand. So remember when I told you can creepers in those non-attacks like Mauve, Lead the Charge, Shadow Puppetry to give that extra action point? Well, Bounding lets you use it. So it lets you get another 4 on the stick, right? And so you're able to present that extra damage. And that helps you get around a lot of heavy blocking decks, right? So it allows you to easily get wider turns, essentially, to get around those decks. So in general, I would say the standard build 60 into most matchups is Bounding Mauve.
Okay.
To get to your 60.
That makes sense.
The rest is a little bit matchup dependent. So reduced to Rune Chant, there's 3 of them. It can be a bit of a brick, but like depending on what you're trying to do, you're not going to run this into, if you're trying to be the aggressor in the matchup, you're going to run Mauve Bounding, you're not going to run Reduce.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Into decks such as Azalea, Bravo, Dory, into decks like that, you're going to run Reduce. Anything that they're swinging tall, not necessarily wide, but tall for sure. I said Bravo already. Levia, we just had that game out. Good into Levia because you can easily create a chant, and you're able to, in a pinch, you can use Tunic for it too. Like if you don't have chance, you can use it for that. It's like reasonable.
True.
I always run Tunic with Reduce, and I don't think it's great to not do that because you have the IP every turn, so you really cannot be using a card to get a Reduce out, in my opinion.
That's fair.
It's similar to using a Shunt, but at least Shunt does a damage, so
True.
a little bit easier. So those are the main matchups. I think it's also kind of cool into ice decks, which I guess is just Lexi and Icelander, because Reduce does
the discounts.
If you have multiple
Rune Chants out, the cost is applied first, or I guess the ice
breaks
effect.
The frostbites. Yeah, it breaks the frostbites.
Okay, yeah.
So
you can still play it for free.
Yeah, so what you can do is you can, if Lexi like Ice Quakes attacks or whatever, and you have 2 chants out, let's say, and you have a frostbite, you just break through the frostbite, right? And you're able to reduce and block for like 7 off a 3 block and a reduce or something like that. So that's quite nice. Now, it shines when it shines, and it can also be bad because it is a brick into like more aggressive hands, but that's reduced essentially.
How about the whales? So we are running the reds and the blues. Yellows come in maybe some more attack action cards. Maybe it is RuneGate 3, so it is a bit more tricky to play.
Yeah, so you're gonna add in the whales and the envelops into matchups you want to go tall,
and
so
they go together.
Tall, yeah,
because
they go together.
The envelops kind of enables the whales, I guess, with the extra rune chant.
Yeah, which is the key. You're gonna want more rune chant generation when you play the 9 whales. Now, into some matchups, you end up taking out the Phantom Wraith and adding the whale and the envelop if you need to make space for reduce. Okay, and that's into stuff like Levia, Bravo, decks like that. Where
you mean the yellows, right? You remove the yellows. Okay.
Yeah, I remove the yellows. I run whale because generally the matchup is a bit slower. We're just kind of slugging at each other.
Okay.
And we don't have pressure turns literally every single turn, right? So there are turns where I'm going to be able to get a whale in the grave, whale in the banner, sorry, and then I'm going to create the chant, and then the next turn I'm going to be able to use it.
Okay.
So it's a lot more reasonable because I'm going to be running reduces, right? So there'll be turns where you just take a turn off, you do whatever, you place your thing, create chants, what have you. So those are the ones where if you need the space for reduce, that's when you can replace the Phantom Wraith yellows with the Deathly Whale yellows.
Gotcha.
If you don't need reduce, you can just play with the whales and the envelops. Now, I think I could say like what I would kind of like to do in every match. I haven't played against literally every matchup, I'll tell you that, but I can tell you what's felt better for me in the matchups. Very, very short. Like I don't want to kill everyone with all my descriptions here, and my voice is already kind of dying.
Yeah. Right.
So I talked about Bravo a bit already in the sideboarding. Some of the other meta picks, Dromai, that's one that I don't think I mentioned specifically other than Nebula Blade. So Nebula Blade is quite good. You're going to want to run the Bounding Moth package, so you're going to want to go a little bit wider. That enables you to hit a dragon. You can play creepers to get more action points. You can hit a good dragon. Think Mirror Guy. We do have a Vynnset first Dromai game on the channel. Check that out. That's probably going to give you a lot more context. Whereas where it's good to hit dragons with Nebula, you gain the chant. Tunic in this matchup, because Creeper is very useful, and it's much easier to get off with Tunic. So that's Dromai. Prism, same kind of idea. Bounding Mauve, literally the same. You have Paupers. Yep. It's if they're on Heralds, it's relatively even. Aura build is a little bit easier because you have Lead the Charge, but just go aggressive. They're not going to be the aggressor in most scenarios.
Yep.
Any other Katsu? I don't think I mentioned.
Okay, yeah, Katsu.
Katsu's interesting because he's an aggressive deck. They can have brick hands. So sometimes he has really great hands, and sometimes he just bricks just like everybody else, where he just pitches a blue Kadachi 1 for 4, or something like that, right?
Yeah.
I would run Carapace in this matchup because the armor can be worth a lot, and being able to block with 6 armor plus creepers in different scenarios is just very, very useful. So I would run Carapace in this matchup. I think Reduce is a bit overkill because you also want to put pressure on Katsu. So for that, I would run Bounding Mauve because the Mauve on hits are still hard for Katsu. Like, unless they're on Flick Flack and literally draw and play it, which is fine. But Rune Chance mixed damage isn't that easy for Katsu to block and then come back with a big turn. So I'd be on Bounding, Mauve, Carapace. No, I'd be on Nebula for that matchup because they don't like blocking.
That makes sense.
So Nebula is just more value.
Similar story for Lexi, because she is an aggressive deck and has similar problems blocking and coming back.
Yeah, you're not going to have enough time to Yellow Whale Envelop into Lexi, honestly.
Okay.
So I've had a little bit more success with Reduces. I think are quite good for the reason I kind of mentioned a little bit earlier, of the fact that it just kind of has favorable interactions with Frostbites.
Right.
So I would run the Reduces. I would run Carapace for the armor. I would run probably Rosetta. And the reason I'm going to run Rosetta without Tunic is because Nebula is very expensive. And when they just flip Arctic, it's just like, there's just not a lot of situations where you're going to be able to have so many resources with a good, strong turn with Nebula.
That's true.
And they don't really give you the space to be able to effectively use it. So I'd probably run Carapace and Rosetta, and I'd run the Reduced to Rune Chance and probably the Reduced to Rune Chance and then probably the 2 Boundings. I probably would not bring in the Mauve. And
because 2 block.
It's another 2 block. You already have a shit ton of go again. And then I would replace the Lead the Charge with Warmongers.
Warmongers, of course. Yeah, that makes sense. Anyone else? I think that's basically the top echelon of the meta.
Azalea literally the same
as Bravo,
except you're running Husk. You're running Husk instead of Carapace into Azalea. That's the difference
between Azalea and Lexi. You mean?
Azalea and Lexi, you're running the same board, except you're running Husk into Azalea and you're running Carapace into Lexi.
Makes sense. Okay.
So those are those ones. Is there anyone else that's like doing super well that I just did? Icelander seems to be picking.
She's creeping up.
Heavily.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Icelander. Rune players just don't do very well against Icelanders. You might be up Schitt's Creek here, but you run the Mauve Bounding Carapace. And I think you're going to be running the Rosetta just because the same Frostbite thing. Like, there's not that many situations where you're gonna be able to actually swing Nebula Blade very efficiently
Yeah.
into these matchups. So you're gonna be going more on the aggressive side, but you're gonna be running reduce just because of that kind of interaction there. So it's gonna be Mauve bounding reduce Carapace. I don't think Warmongers does anything to that deck, so you're not gonna worry about.
Yeah,
Warmongers
it's gonna be like
into
one
that.
non-attack per turn, or one attack per turn for that matter. So it's like
Mhm.
not much
Yep.
comboing going on.
Levia, go look at our CC game that we put up. I explained the sideboard there. It worked
And you,
pretty well.
You talked
I
about it a
liked
little bit too. Yeah, it worked very well. Yeah.
Yeah, except for the brick, but your Rune Blade. That's
It
life.
happens.
I
Cool.
don't think there's any other matchups that are really like stupidly high
Yeah.
in the meta that I would really want to.
And a lot of them kind of fall into these categories that we've already talked about, like go wide or go more into like defensive with your rune chant it reduces. So
as far as the game plan in general, when in doubt, if you want to present more on hits with things like Mauve and just have wider turns because you don't think they're going to block, you're going to want the Mauve bounding package. If you think they're going to be blocking more, you're going to want the Deathly Whale envelop package because you're going to more likely have a turn off to put the whale in there for like double whale turns, creepers turns,
right, some more
with, like,
setup.
multiple banish. Exactly, more setup and more rune gate threes. That's the general idea.
Awesome.
And then Husk into literally Azalea Dory, Carapace if you need armor for on hits, and Tunic for everything else. That's the general kind of rule. And then Quill Hand when you need Quill Hands. I just kind of explained that already.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, so that was the deck.
Very nice.
I like the closing thoughts here is I like the deck. I think.
Is it top tier? Is Vynnset top tier? No.
I think she's solidly in B tier.
Okay.
And the reason is because I think she could do some disgusting things.
Yeah.
I think she's kind of like in the meta right now. If Icelander, Bravo, Dromai is the meta. Like you have a good matchup into Dromai. I think it's a fairly favorable matchup into Dromai. I think your matchup into Icelander Bravo is pretty bad.
Yeah.
Just because like Bravo has a shit ton of blues to pay for the rune chance, it can still like chip you down, and Vynnset still has an IP penalty every turn.
Yeah.
So that's a little awkward, and all the on hits are like kind of great. I think that Azuri is also pretty annoying. Like decks can fatigue you, like fatigue Dory, fatigue Bolden, contract Azuri. These decks can fatigue you. So you have to be able to be aware that that's something that will happen because you could fatigue Rune Blades. It's possible. It's happened before. So you do have to set up those wider turns. So realizing when they're trying to do that, when they flip the axe on Dory, they're going to try to fatigue you. You can't. You need to be setting up big turns. You can't be able to, but you can set up big turns with this deck. So I do like this deck. Not really what I had in mind when I saw this hero released.
Right.
But, I guess this will tide me over until they finally release a Necromancer that we can all just play and enjoy.
Yep.
Because that's the only thing I'm waiting for.
Not an Alchemist. I'm looking forward to Alchemist.
I don't care about Alchemist. I want a Necromancer. I just want to play Liliana and Fab. And
open Diablo 4 and get your Necromancer.
It's not the same, man. Okay.
Yeah.
So with that, if you have any questions about the deck that I didn't answer directly, I will look through the comments, so I will be able to answer that. Deck list will be in the description, of course. And if you like this kind of content, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. We will be doing the Levy attack a little bit later.
Yep.
And from wherever you're watching in the world, have a good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Bye for now.